Today is Thursday, December 5th, 2013, and we are interviewing Stephen Schroeder at Penn State's Innovation Park. Mr. Schroeder is 65 years old, having been born on September 22nd, 1948. My name is Ashley Holgate, and I'll be the interviewer. Stephen Munchell, Sean Francis, and Kabir Muhammad are on camera, while Emily Hostel is the floor manager. Mr. Schroeder volunteered his time to come talk to Penn State University's College of Communications about his experience. Mr. Schroeder, could you tell us what rank you were and what war you served in?
I was in the U.S. Army. I served in Vietnam from May of '68 to May of '69. I went in a buck private and I came out a sergeant.
Okay, that's great. Did you enlist or were you drafted like many others at your time?
I was just going back for my second year of college at Michigan State University when I got really bored with college. And I turned 19 and I went down to my local draft board and volunteered for the draft.
Okay, and where were you living at that time?
In East Lansing, Michigan.
Okay. Why did you pick to go into the Army?
Because I didn't want to be in school anymore.
What do you...
I was looking for, let's back up just a tad. My father, we lived overseas a lot. I grew up all around the world.
Okay.
And we traveled a lot. And I just sort of always knew I was going to go to college, and I knew I was going to go to Michigan State, because that's where both my parents went. So I went and didn't have a particularly productive first year. And the second year I just decided I didn't want to do that anymore, and I was looking for adventure. College was boring.
What was your major while you were in college?
I had several.
Okay.
At that level. Before I went in, I had several majors.
Sounds like most college students. What do you remember from your first days in the service?
Well, you were inducted, you were yelled at a lot, you didn't sleep much, you didn't know what was going on, a lot of confusion.
Were you scared?
No, just confused.
Young and confused.
Yeah.
Do you have any instructors that stood out to you? Maybe you got yelled at once?
No.
No, never?
I don't remember. Oh, I got yelled at. I'm sure I got yelled at, but I don't remember any of my training instructors, what their names were.
Okay. What were some of your duties while you were stationed in Vietnam?
Well, I was, when I went in, I was assigned to the 4th Infantry Division, and after a week or so of sort of training, in-country training, I was assigned to a rifle company, B Company, 3rd of the 12th, and I was a grunt, an infantryman. I carried an M16 and grenades,
Oh, wow.
Things like that. I was one of the guys out in the field doing the shooting.
Oh, wow. That's scary. I see that you brought in a few pictures, one of them being the map. Do you remember where you were stationed?
Yes. On the map, I'm not supposed to point, but...
You can.
Okay. You came in at Cameron Bay, which is, I can't read this very well. Wherever Cameron Bay is, I think around here, a giant base. All the ships came in there. They brought new recruits or new replacements in there. Then I was assigned to Pleiku, which was the home of the 4th Infantry Division. And from there I went up to Dak To, which is right here. I'm sorry, it's right here.
Okay.
And that was the early part. Later on, when I eventually, my first many months were right in this area. This is the Laos and Cambodian borders. This was called the Central Highlands. And we were right where that arrow is, and the arrow designates a major infiltration route for the North Vietnamese, and that's who we were fighting with, was the North Vietnamese. Later on, I got out of the field and I went to work in supply and munitions, and I went back to An Khe, and then finally over here to Kon Tum, and then finally over here to An Khe.
Wow, so you were moving around all over the place.
In the northern area, I don't know. Well.
Did they have you in each spot for a set amount of time, or did they just move you whenever?
No, you went in and you were assigned to an infantry unit. You were with it for your tour. The Army had a 1-year tour for enlisted men, and if you either got wounded, killed, you might leave the unit, or if for some reason they let you or assigned you, gave you a job in the rear, then you would get out that way. Otherwise, you were with your unit wherever it was for 1 year.
Okay. Do you remember some of your daily tasks that you had to do while you were over there?
Yes.
Can you explain?
Not trying to be difficult.
Can you explain some of them?
Well, it's the life of the grunt in Vietnam, at least in the Central Highlands, was you you have another picture here of a fire base that happened to be the one that I joined the unit on. You spent maybe a quarter of your time on one of those fire bases. You spent half of the time out as a company. I was with the company, about 100 men, and you spent you're out on patrol. You're out humping. It was very mountainous, hilly area, similar to central Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Some of the taller hilltops we were on were like 1338. Those are meters, so it's a 4,000-foot hill. Steep valleys, steep ridges, and you'd carry everything you had, and you'd hump up and down.
How heavy was
these
everything
things.
that you had?
I tried to estimate that a few years ago. It was a long list of things. It was, I don't know, 80 pounds, 85 pounds, and you just carried it. It was so heavy that you would often, when you started on a mission, water and food were heavy. Munitions, if you didn't use them, you came back with them. But the food you didn't come back with, and the water you didn't come back with. And you leave with enough food for 3 days. And to get up, you would sometimes need help.
Yeah, I can imagine.
We'd help each other
Yeah.
stand up.
Yikes. Did you ever see any direct combat while you were in Vietnam?
Yes.
What was that like for you?
Interesting. It was there's a process I think that many people who've been through combat go through. First, you're anxious and you don't know what's going on. Weeks, a month or so, you start to learn the ropes and you get comfortable. You go on some of these missions, and this was Vietnam was the first war where the helicopter was heavily used to deliver troops. We could be taken anywhere at any time, very quickly, and they did. So you would go on an assault, they call them CAs, a combat assault, and it was very exciting being on a helicopter with your legs hanging out, going into a landing zone that you weren't sure about. It was rather extreme adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
So you get through that. You're always sort of scared and apprehensive, I guess, but after living with it for so long, and you were just there. It was constant, 24/7. You either get, this is a picture of going on very early, one of the first ones I went on, and you sat on the floor of the chopper. The doors were gone. There were 5 of us. You can't see our packs, but we're pretty much fully loaded. There's a guy sitting in the middle, and this surface is made out of aluminum. And the helicopter, if you've ever sat in a helicopter, they vibrate a lot.
Yeah.
Well, they said you couldn't fall out, like hell. You just set it vibrating, and you're constantly, jiggling to the side. So you grab onto the guy in the middle.
Yeah.
Hold on to him. At least I did several times. And I had a bit of an advantage because I'm tall. I could actually reach the skid. There's a skid down here.
Keep
that's
yourself
sitting
balanced
on.
a little bit.
Well, when you're getting out, but I forgot your question now. It was about what it's like being in combat. Do you get scared? Yes, you get scared. But you go through a cycle where you get over that, you get sort of used to it. It becomes normal. And at some point, it happened to me, I became complacent.
Okay.
And that after a while, that scared me that I became complacent.
I can imagine. Do you have any memorable moments or stories that you want to share with us?
Well, there's just one that pops to mind of becoming complacent. Life for us was, like I said, some of the time you'd be sitting in a fire base, which is in that first picture. Then you go on patrols. Well, you were either on a patrol with your company or rarely with a platoon, 30-ish men. Other times, most of the time, it was with a recon patrol. There'd be 4 of you. And you go out for 3 days or so, and you might go, you'd have a map and a code book, and they'd be telling you where they wanted you to go. And you go on this patrol, and I'm losing track of the question again.
Your most memorable moment.
I was on one, and for some reason, I think it got extended a day, and we'd run out of food. I had no food, hadn't eaten in a while. And we got back to the fire base, and we got back late in the day, and they did have hot chow once in a while on these fire bases. The choppers would bring them in. And so there'd be a chow line late in the day, and you could go get some hot chow. Mm-hmm. And that was about to close, and I knew that was happening. And so what I remember was I needed to get to the chow line, and we were getting mortared. Well, the heck with the mortars, I'm going to the chow line.
You wanted food.
So I just walked down, and I could tell they were shooting 60-millimeter mortars at us. They're little things. And they were plopping down along the outside of the perimeter. And I just remember walking down the edge of the perimeter to get to where the food was, and I heard one coming, and it landed down there a little ways away, and I just ignored it.
You just
and
wanted to eat.
So thinking about that later on made me realize how complacent I was getting.
That's a good
I didn't want to
story.
be that way. One other one, there's another picture in there. We happened to run a battalion-size operations. We didn't do a lot with the whole battalion. So this is 4 companies now on maneuver. Battalion commanders, maneuvering these 4 companies around. And there was a plan. This particular thing happened to be called Operation Fairfax Warrior. And we're going in north of north of where we'd been operating. And this is a little bit of a racist term today, but we called it, there were areas that we were sort of in all the time that we felt, unless the recon patrols were running into somebody, there wasn't, the North Vietnamese hadn't moved back in yet. Mm-hmm. There was always a few, but you never see a large unit.
Yeah.
Well, there's supposed to be a large unit there, and we referred to the area where they were as Indian country. We were going into Indian country, and we knew it. 2 days after the mission started, and it started out bad. The first company in got chewed up quite badly. One of the 2 typhoons to hit Vietnam during the Americans' presence there hit just north of us. And they didn't have the weather forecasting like they do today. Mm-hmm. So they didn't know it was a typhoon, just thought it was really bad rain. Well, it was really, really, really bad rain and wind, and we couldn't get any air support, we couldn't get chopper support. And we'd gotten in pretty far, and I read logs later on that they got concerned that they weren't going to be able to get us out of there. Mm-hmm. And by the time they decided to get us out, we'd already had pretty heavy casualties. One night we got hit pretty hard. We got 6 killed and I don't remember now, 23 wounded.
Oh, wow.
And most of that was right where I was. And I'd taken over I've started to jump around here.
That's okay.
I'd taken over there's one squad that had 1 guy left in it, mm-hmm. in my platoon. They were just a little ways to my left. And there was just 1 of them left. And so I took over that squad, and we got all the wounded, and the the day later, we finally got some choppers in. We got the KIAs out. and I'm staring down here, talking to you.
That's fine.
And anyway, we finally got out of there, and I became squad leader. That was a big deal because at that point I no longer had to do listening post duties, which was a bad duty. You didn't want to do it. It meant when whenever we were in a company, when the company was together, you'd always send listening posts 100 yards or so outside of the perimeter.
Okay.
Every platoon would send 2 of these guys out, and they'd sit there all night. Theory being that they'd get hit first. So you didn't want to be the guy out there.
Yeah, you don't want to be that guy.
So squad leaders didn't have to do LP duty. So I wanted to be a squad leader, and when I took over that squad, I was happy to have done it.
Yeah, I can imagine. Did you get awarded any medals or citations during your time?
Well, the one that I'm proud of is the Combat Infantryman's Badge.
Yeah.
You had to have seen sustained combat. And if you, the pictures that I have, if you look at the pictures, it was clear that I was proud of it when I got it. It differentiated you from the I'm pointing to it there. That's the day I got home. That it differentiated you from all the support troops that were not out fighting.
Yeah.
The majority of troops in Vietnam weren't fighting the war.
Yeah. How did you stay in touch with your friends and family from home?
Letters.
Letters. How often did they come in, or they?
My mother was real good at writing regularly. I think I wrote friends a couple times, but it wasn't the same.
Yeah.
You were gone.
Yeah.
But I talked to my mother. I mean, I wrote to my mother.
That's
Yeah.
good. What were the conditions like at the camp that you were at?
Well, it wasn't a camp. It was out in the woods. It was rainy and muddy. There was a eating. You can't quite tell it from the picture, but those are sunglasses. I told my mother I really could use some sunglasses, and those are what she sent. Aren't they cute? And this is, we happened to be operating with a South Vietnamese unit for a while, and that's not a C ration can, but we hated C rations and they hated their rations. So we traded. So I finally figured out I think that's a can of tomatoes from South Vietnam. It's one of their rations. But you're just dirty all the time. You never showered or anything. I never took my boots off except to change my socks. I only changed my socks when you'd get a fresh uniform, which wasn't new, it was just had been laundered. That happened every few weeks or so. And depending on where you were in the pecking order, you got first choice. So early on, I was very low in the pecking order, and I'm tall and thin. Yeah. So I would get shirts that came up to here. Pants that would barely fit, and you'd blouse them to keep the leeches out. Bugs were interesting. There were a lot of insects there. Huge insect life, real interesting insect life. Leeches were everywhere. You get them on you.
I don't like those. Speaking of food, what did you typically do for food, and did you have enough supply? Rations. That's all?
Well, the C rations were the early part of my tour. About the first half, they were canned in the 50s. That was the dates on them. I remember that. And you get a case of 12 rations, and 4 of them would have fruit, a can of fruit in it. And those fruits, a canned fruit was prize. You wanted that canned fruit. You couldn't eat most of the other stuff. So I lived on the canned fruit. They give you crackers, a little can of crackers, and peanut butter. Oh. Peanut butter, crackers, and canned fruit, if I could get it. Otherwise, you'd try to eat the other stuff. It wasn't eatable. Heating it was interesting. One of the things we carried was a pound of C4. Probably doesn't mean anything to you. It's a plastic explosive. Oh. And we were issued it because when we after you'd been in somewhere moving around for a while, you had to usually clear a place for the helicopters to come in to extract you. So you put the C4 up against the base of trees and you blow the trees. So you're clearing a landing zone. In the rations, you'd get this little thing to heat with, a heating tab, but they didn't work. The little little piece, thumbnail-sized piece of C4, you'd light it. As long as you didn't stomp on it, it was fine. It produced great heat. So we heat all our food with C4.
Oh,
That's how you cook.
that's interesting. Did you feel the pressure of everything that was going on around you, or did you have a way that you kind of tried not to focus on it?
No, I felt the pressure.
You did. I can imagine.
It was, well, when, you know, it wasn't constant combat. And sometimes you'd be sitting on these nights. Now you're out in the highlands of Southeast Asia. There's no lights anywhere. And you'd be on a hilltop, and the panoramic view was incredible. And down below you, you could see a long, long ways. And if there was lights, it was usually from action. It was rifle fire, mortars, things like they had the Air Force flew a DC-3 with miniguns mounted on the sides and the sides of it, and they'd fly around and they'd shoot these miniguns down to the ground, and they were quite accurate. And so you'd see them. They're called Puff the Magic Dragon. You could see them down in the valleys flying around, and a stream of tracers shooting down. It was a heck of a light show.
Yeah, I bet. Did you get any leave time while you were serving, and what did you do when you had it?
I went in May, joined the unit around the 1st of June, and I became squad leader in early September, and in January, I had a brother who was in the CIA working in the Philippines, and at the time that was considered part of the war zone, and if you had a brother in the war zone, you could go visit them.
Okay.
So I got a 7-day leave to go visit my brother in the Philippines.
Well, that's cool.
It was cool.
Did you get to travel anywhere else?
Right before I left, I got an R&R to Australia.
Oh.
And that's where I picked these things up.
Do you want to tell us a little about what that is?
Yeah, I would never have worn a bell in the field. And I don't know why I bought a bell, but it actually is a bell. And a peace symbol.
Okay.
If you'd seen my helmet, I think I have a picture in those pictures I sent you guys. There's a peace symbol in the front of my helmet. This is a knife. Right after I got there, I realized I could really use a good knife, and my father bought it. My mother sent it over to me. This is a 16 millimeter camera that I bought before I went over. I figured having something really light would be a good idea, and it was. That's where most of the pictures I have are from that, except when I got in the rear, I got a real camera.
Okay.
And started using that, and that's just a lighter I carried.
Okay, those are pretty cool. Do you recall any humorous stories that happened?
I'm sure there were. I don't remember. I'm sure, give it a lot of thought. I couldn't come up with any off the top of my head.
Okay. Did you keep any type of diary or anything? Okay. Did you save your letters maybe, just to look back on?
My mother saved them. I've read them, and I sound like a 19-year-old kid who's trying not to say anything to his parents about what's going on.
Yeah. Trying to keep it inside.
Yeah.
Do you recall the day that your service ended, and like how did it make you feel?
Well, there's two different days. The service in Vietnam, I definitely recall that, and the day I was discharged from the Army. Two different, quite eventful days. Coming back from Vietnam, I left my unit, flew down to Cam Bay again, got on an airplane the next day, flew to Fort Lewis, Washington. They put you in this, you went through a combine, you went in one end as you came out of your unit. They gave you a haircut, they issued you a Class A uniform, gave you a plane ticket. You came out the other end wearing the Class A uniform with the plane ticket, got on a bus, they brought you to the airport, got on the plane, came At the time, my parents were living in Washington, D.C. I flew into National Airport, got a cab, took the cab home. My parents didn't, I only had a vague idea of when I was going to be back. And I was home.
And they were the happiest
it was,
people.
Well, that was 2 days after leaving my unit.
Yeah.
It didn't work.
Oh.
That's so common. My experience is just so common with people. At the time, the military didn't do the right thing with us. You can't take us from that one environment with no wind down time
Yeah.
and send us back home.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. I mean, I was fine. I was fine. I mean, I was okay. I was handling it. But I know that the day I got home, I think it was in the morning, and got out of my clothes. They took some pictures, and I got out of my clothes, and I said, I'm really tired. I need to take a nap. They got me up a day and a half later.
Oh my gosh.
They woke me up, and I was annoyed. Why'd you wake me up?
Wow.
First time I've been in a bed in a year, and I was enjoying sleep. Adjustment was hard.
Yeah.
Getting out of the service, which was not for another 3 months, I'd gotten an early out to go back to school. This time I wanted to go to school. I wasn't just there because I was expected to be. And because I'd had that week leave in Vietnam, I owed the Army money. So I had to buy my way out, which I happily did.
I bet.
Went back to Michigan State, and I was there at just a few days later, started my sophomore year in college.
Okay. Do you keep in touch with any of the guys that you met in the service?
The first time I made contact with anybody was in '98. I pretty much just stuffed it all inside and realized real soon after getting back and getting out of the Army that nobody wanted to hear about it. It wasn't that you weren't being treated with respect, it was that you were being treated with disrespect. America, well, my corner of America, it didn't happen until much later that the idea that, don't blame the soldiers. They blamed the soldiers.
Yeah.
A lot of experience with World War II vets especially, who thought we weren't fighting a real war. Real war. Didn't matter, we were in combat more than they were.
Yeah.
None of that mattered. It's just that it wasn't a real war. And in the end, we lost.
Yeah.
Although going and meeting with in '99, a group got together and I was part of it, and we've since had reunions every other year. And I put up a website for my company about 5 years ago. Collected a lot of names, trying to get people together, trying to get them to talk. It really helped me just to talk with people that shared the experience.
Yeah. So when you guys meet up, it's usually through your companies. You guys usually set something up, like a reunion or something?
Yeah, it's a reunion, and different guys are in charge, and we go south sometimes. We go to, first one was in Savannah, Georgia. We've been to, I did one, sponsored one in Washington, D.C. We've been to Minnesota, Texas once.
Okay.
So.
In some of your pictures, it looks like you have a little bit of Christmas spirit. Were the holidays particularly difficult for you guys?
Not really. You didn't think about it. I don't recall this, but they would try to get you some kind of not a whole turkey, but turkey.
Yeah.
As you're hot, if you happen to be around at that time. I don't recall anything, so it's probably out somewhere in the field. This was, my mother sent me a little Christmas tree, and it was in the middle of December. Well, I couldn't take it with me, so we put it up and had it up for a few days.
Okay. And what was your career after, after the war?
Well, I went back to Michigan State, and I was always good at reading manuals. In Vietnam, I was really good at reading maps. That's one of the reasons I became squad leader, because I knew where I was. I read manuals and discovered that my freshman year, one of the courses I had a lot of trouble with was French. I just didn't want to learn it. Didn't know why I had to have it. Even though I'd had it in high school, I still wasn't any good at it. But I could substitute Fortran programming for a foreign language.
Okay.
So I took Fortran and discovered computers. That led into a group I worked with there for a while, the Computer Institute for Social Science Research, and that ended up a career in computers. I went from Michigan State to small college in northern Pennsylvania, Mansfield State College. I was academic computing center there for a few years, and then I came to Penn State and retired from here.
Okay. How did the military experience influence what you think about war and the military itself?
I have great respect for what soldiers do. It's amazing what soldiers do, what young men do. I don't want them to do it. When I came back, I was anti-war. I participated in some anti-war events. Vietnam was not a winnable war. By the time I got back, it was, why are we dying there at that point? You fought for your buddies, and it turns out when you got back that's literally all you did. You were fighting for your buddies. You weren't fighting for anybody else. But I don't believe in, war is a last resort thing. If you're going to do it to win.
Yeah.
Don't do another Vietnam. The military commanders who were officers, young officers in Vietnam, knew that and learned that, and ran later operations like that. I think people that haven't been in the military are still subject to making the same mistake again, and I fear that.
Yeah. I see in one of your pictures your father's with you. Was he a veteran as well?
No.
No. Okay.
My grandfather came to this country because his mother didn't want him to be in the First World War.
Oh, okay.
He was rather anti-war.
Okay.
I never could talk to him about
military stuff.
Much.
Yeah.
So I don't know his deep down feelings about it.
Okay. Are there any other stories or experiences that you'd like to share with us? No? Okay.
Not that I can think of. I mean, there's a ton of stories. Just.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate your time, and your stories were great. Thank you for everything that you've done, and that's all we have time for.
You're welcome.